So how's your health?
ഒട്ടും കേൾക്കാൻ വയ്യ. എനിക്ക് കേൾക്കാൻ വയ്യ.
हाँ जी नहीं
Okay. Shall we start?
Yeah,
We can
please.
start.
Yes.
Honorable Dr. Manmohan Singh, MP and former Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Thomas Isaac, Finance Minister of Kerala, distinguished panelists and learned participants at this virtual meeting. I am thankful to all of you for having kindly agreed to be with us today at this important event, which is part of our ongoing series of academic events planned and organized to celebrate the 50th birthday of the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum. A number of lectures by famous economists have already taken place, and some more will take place in the months that follow. Today's event truly represents the icing on the cake, as we have with us two individuals who have admirably combined the roles of academic, economist, administrator, and political leader. And we have also panelists who are very eminent economists. It is virtually impossible to introduce Dr. Manmohan Singh, as he has donned so many diverse roles and distinguished himself in so many fields. During his long career that continues even now, he has been an academic of distinction, administrator both at the national and global level, governor of the Reserve Bank of India, finance minister, and prime minister of India. He is in his sixth term presently as member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha. He has countless awards to his credit, including Padma Vibhushan, Adam Smith Prize at the University of Cambridge, Euro Money Award as Finance Minister of the Year in 1993, Asia Money Award for Finance Minister of the Year, Asia, in the same year, Lokmanya Tilak Award, and several others. He has honorary doctorates from many universities, including Oxford, Cambridge, State University of Moscow, and the University of Alberta, Edmonton, Canada. As finance minister, he goes down in history as the man who reshaped the course of India's economic history through the sweeping reforms that he effected in 1991. I have had the privilege and honor of working with him for a few years in various capacities in the state and the center. What struck me most forcefully about him was his capacity to be open to ideas, even if he did not necessarily agree with them, his humility and his gentle approach to all, his deep understanding of the economy, and the pragmatic manner in which he took important decisions after hearing different views and then making up his own mind. This was driven home to me, particularly in 2008, when the global economy was undergoing convulsions as a consequence of financial collapse in the US, and India managed to avoid a dreadful fallout through stimulus packages, timely stimulus packages designed thoughtfully under his leadership. Dr. Thomas Isaac is our own man. He is inextricably linked to the Center for Development Studies, having researched here and taught here for many years. He too is an administrator par excellence and is known at the national and global level for his phenomenal work in introducing decentralized governance in Kerala and strengthening the Panchayati Raj network, besides the prominent role that he played in the GST Council. He has more than 50 books to his credit, both in English and Malayalam, and one of his books won him a Kerala Sahitya Academy Award. Even as a busy finance minister, he continues to retain his academic interests, researches, and writes books on various facets of the Kerala economy. The book being released today forms part of our ongoing work on the interface between Kerala and the world economy. Many different aspects, such as migration and remittances, sustainable development, commercial crops, livestock and fisheries, international trade, and socio-economic indicators are dealt with by well-known economists. We have with us today a very distinguished panel of economists, Professors Francis Stewart, Robin Jeffrey, M.A. Oommen, K.P. Kannan, and Tirthankar Roy. I shall introduce them as and when they speak. I now request Honorable Dr. Manmohan Singh to address us and to launch the book Kerala and the World Economy.
Dear Dr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Thomas Isaac, Professor Mani, distinguished panelists, members of the faculty, students, and well-wishers of the Center for Development Studies. I am very happy to be associated with this very important event in the history of the Center for Development Studies, an institution founded by my esteemed friend and colleague, Dr. Tirthankar Roy, whose contributions to development economics are numerous and varied and have greatly influenced eminent economists of succeeding generations. I know that Dr. Raj built this institution from scratch and gathered around him some of the best known economists of the day. I'm glad that CDS, as it is popularly known in Kerala, continues to carry forward this great tradition and has contributed to the evolution of economic thinking and analysis at the national and even global level. Many scholars who have made their mark in political economy worldwide proudly claim CDS as their alma mater, including my friend Dr. Thomas Isaac, Honorable Finance Minister of Kerala, who is participating in this function today. One of the earliest and most cited research works by CDS is the UN-sponsored study of poverty, unemployment, and development policy, which Professor Raj and his companions helped publish in 1975. Although the study may not have used the term the Kerala model of development in form, it is in this study which brought to the development discourse both in India and abroad the concept that per capita income cannot be the sole criterion for assessing growth, that no development process can be complete without upward movement in social parameters, in health, in education, in employment, in poverty alleviation, in social justice, and the like. The current pandemic and its horrific aftermath is a stark reminder of imbalances in the growth process in both developing and developed countries. The CDS has now a 50-year tradition of facilitating informed discussion on Kerala's economy. After the 1975 publication, I understand that several faculty members and indeed MPhil and PhD students at the center have published monographs and journal articles on different aspects of the state's economy. But an all-encompassing monograph which discusses the more recent performance of the state was found wanting. Kerala and the world economy seeks to bridge this important gap in the literature on the state's economy. The book has confronted several oft-repeated propositions regarding Kerala's economy with fresh empirical data and methods of data analysis. These are the integration of the state's economy with the rest of the world, the importance of remittances sent by Kerala's workers, especially in the Middle East, the state of Kerala's manufacturing sector, and the tradition and the condition of its environment and agro-biodiversity. The book deals with these current and at the same time continuing issues in 7 broad groups such as sustainable development, commercial crops, livestock and fisheries, ice technique, manufacturing and modern industries, international trade, migration and remittances and health. The 16 chapters in the book present the reader a comprehensive survey of the state's development experience in more recent times. This collection is timely and of seminal importance because Kerala, more than most other Indian states, has a strong interface with the national and global economy. The state faces challenges that it has to overcome as quickly as possible. The growing trend towards protectionism and the hardening of national borders through increasing tariffs, non-tariff barriers, steep decline in economic activity, plunging prices of energy sources such as fossil fuels and growing restrictions on movement of skilled and unskilled labor, all these pose global threats which Kerala has to bravely confront. At the national level, the economy has been on a downward spiral for 2 years, even before the onset of COVID. The pandemic and its devastating effect on the poor, both with respect of employment and incomes, has further aggravated our problems. Unless firm and quick measures are taken at the national level to stimulate demand, as we did so effectively in 2008 in the wake of the US subprime mortgage crisis, I am afraid still darker times are ahead of us. This is the time to shed economic orthodoxy and take bold decisions that will put the national economy out of the deep depression to which it seems inexorably headed. I hope CDS will provide intellectual leadership to recommend strategies both for the state and the nation. With this, I am delighted to release the book Kerala and the World Economy, and I pass on the first copy to Dr. Thomas Isaac, Honorable Finance Minister, Government of Kerala, and a distinguished alumni of the center. I also use this opportunity to wish the CDS many more years of fruitful research, teaching and training activities in the area of development economics. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now request Dr. Thomas Isaac, Honorable Finance Minister of Kerala, to receive the book virtually and to address us.
Former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, CDS directors, Dr. Sunil Mani, and other academic colleagues of mine and students. Thank you very much, Dr. Manmohan Singh. I'm really privileged and feel honored to be asked to be the recipient of the first copy of the book to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Center for Development Studies from you. You belong to that generation of economists like Dr. Raj, who really laid the foundations of the economic discourse in India. I remember that during the last 15 years, a number of times I had occasions to and privilege to meeting you. Every time you have found time to spare some time to talk about CDS, ask how CDS is now faring and so on, and perhaps some reminiscence of Dr. Raj or Professor Gulati. And that shows the care and affection that you have for this institute. We are deeply honored, sir. The book that you have just launched reflects a very important, vital aspect of what we have come to consider as a Kerala model or Kerala's development experience. It's global integration. See. The modern phase of this global integration, starting with colonialism, maybe the late 18th century onwards, resulted in rapid commercialization of agriculture, emergence of agro-processing industries, trade and commerce, emergence of new classes, that's emerging, then consequent contradictions to traditional um, social structures like caste, resulting in the formation of social religious movements, which resulted in turn a demand for education, healthcare, and transformed Kerala over time. See? And story of this transformation has been the main field of exploration of various scholars and at Center for Development Studies. And this book brings together, as Dr. Manmohan Singh remarked, certain more recent aspects of this external integration of Kerala, namely the commercial agriculture, international trade, and very importantly, a new aspect, international migration and inflow of remittances, and then the global concerns of sustainability of this process. So this is indeed, this collection, an important addition to the body of our knowledge. And this book, in a sense, also reflects the strength of Center for Development Studies. That is, I think, lies in its empirical research, of course, informed by theoretical insights. But that's where the strength of Center for Development Studies lies. Any student who passes from Center for Development Studies would have a thorough knowledge of India's database, some basic tools of how to analyze this data, its potential and limitations. 40 years back, when I joined CDS as an MPhil student, little did I know about academic. I mean, to honestly confess, I never touched an academic journal. The first time in CDS library, I came to see that. But we are fortunate to have that founding fathers, Dr. Raj, Gulati, Vaidyanath, and Krishnan, Krishnaji, and so on, who are just not just great scholars, but excellent teachers who spend time with the students. It was there for asking. You only to barge into the room. How meticulously, even term papers, they would write in fine handwriting the comments and so on. And a few years with them really, I mean, transformed you. You came to enjoy academics. Okay. They transferred you that spirit. And it was not just them. Their presence attracted so many luminaries from all around, particularly a person like John Robinson, who used to visit CDS in every window. And when she was here and she used to teach the MPhil course also, there would be a galaxy of particularly left Keynesians who would be coming virtually on a pilgrimage to CDS to interact with all of them. And you grow without knowing that you're growing. You mature without understanding, really documenting that you are maturing. And I think the CDS years really did transform me. And an important aspect of CDS is, I think, that library. This is something I greatly, hugely enjoy, that any visitor to CDS wouldn't miss it. Of course, you can miss it, the 7-storied building in the center of Center for Development Studies with 1.5 lakh books and 400 journals and so on. Even if it gets a great pleasure to walk around through this spiral, just see the smell and touch of these books. And well, I think this has a big impact upon the students who come to CDS. And of course, the cosmopolitan atmosphere of the center. It has very little of the Malayali chauvinism, and always had majority of non-Malayalis in the faculty and the students, and that gave it a true national environment. And of course, Becker's buildings, okay, that's a charm to it. But, it was a big struggle over 5 years to get the government to permit, the PWD to permit this architecture style to come. I think the Chief Minister, Chudameno himself, had to intervene and give a special sanction because PWD was predicting that will tumble down in 10 years, and we are celebrating the 50th anniversary, and the buildings are strong as ever. And of course, the green has become more greener, more plants and trees have come. So, and then don't want to take more time, but I was asked to give reminiscence of CDS. And therefore, let me say another thing, the informal atmosphere of center. Maybe it was the advantage of having a small place, it's a big, huge university, but there was a lot of informality in the interaction between the students as well as between the students and the teachers. Their houses were our own houses, okay, when we were studying. And not only that, the freedom that Center for Developer Study gave to the students and the faculty to choose their subject of inquiry, their ideological position. I don't think a person like me who was the president of the largest student union doing an MPhil in Center for Developer Studies would have survived without a consideration. This guy is different, but he may have a role. As Raj would joke sometimes, it's something rare to get it anywhere else in India. At a time when this kind of academic freedom are being threatened generally in India, it's very important that we preserve this freedom and accommodation, a spirit of liberalism and everything at Center for Developer Studies. And that should be our resolve on this 50th anniversary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Manmohan Singh, for the kind words he said.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas Isaac. May I now introduce Professor Frances Stewart. She is Professor Emeritus of Development Economics, University of Oxford. She was Director of Oxford Department of International Development from 1993 to 2003 and Director of the Center for Research on Inequality, Human Security and Ethnicity at the department between 2003 and 2010. She has many publications and she has co-authored UNICEF's influential study, Adjustment with a Human Face, War and Underdevelopment, and she is leading author and editor of Horizontal Inequalities and Conflict, Understanding Group Violence in Multi-Ethnic Societies. May I now request Professor Frances Stewart, who is an old friend of this institution, to say a few words.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here with all of you, with Dr. Manmohan Singh, with Dr. Thomas Isaac, with my fellow panelists, and of course with the members of the CDS and the staff and all the students. It's a real privilege to participate in your 50th anniversary. And for me, it's a personal privilege because I've had a number of personal connections with the centre. I became a friend and admirer of Professor Raj when I was just 15, when I came with my father to India. My father's Professor Kaldor. And we met Professor Raj and I.G. Patel, and they took us all over northern India, and we learned such a lot about India and became such good friends with them. And when my father died, we gave some of his collection to the centre with the help of Sunil Mani, and who was then visiting Oxford, because we knew that would be where my father would be happiest for his books to be. And then I visited the centre again when the books were donated, and again as a professional visit just a couple of years ago, and had a wonderful time talking to people and staying at the centre, which has all the qualities which is Thomas Isaac has just told us about, of openness and friendliness and non-doctrinaire features. Over the 50 years, in my view, the centre has established a reputation as among the foremost institutions devoted to the study of development economics and also to higher education in India. And it seems to me that it has retained much of Professor Raj's personality in its non-doctrinaire approach, in its empirical approach, and also in its beautiful buildings. And this book is a very fitting tribute to the 50th anniversary. Kerala is well known for its great achievements in human development, which are quite exceptional in relation to its low income. And I just looked at the figures recently in terms of the management of COVID, and they're amazing. With a population of 35 million, the figures I found said that Kerala has had just 1,500 deaths. Let me tell you that the UK has a population just about twice as much. It's had 45,000 deaths, more than 30 times, and rising. And the UK's income is 13 times the per capita income in Kerala. That just puts in perspective what a brilliant achievement has been made here. But in general, most people would say, I think, that Kerala hasn't done quite so well on the economy, though it's been doing better recently. And this book seems to me to fill a major gap with its very wide-ranging focus on a huge range of economic sectors. And it points to past achievements and future potential. It covers every important economic sector, and I believe it's going to become an essential text for those who are interested in the economy of Kerala. Its insights leave me with an optimistic outlook for Kerala, because it seems to me, if you look at the global economy, the future lies with IT services and with the green economy. And this book indicates that Kerala's high level of human capital and its already incipient development in these sectors are going to make it possible for Kerala to move ahead very fast in this new global context. So let me end by just saying I think this is a great book, a great start for the next 50 years, and I hope for Kerala. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I will now introduce Professor Robin Jeffrey, who is an Australian historian, currently a visiting professor at the National University of Singapore. His primary research interest is the modern history and politics of India, especially with reference to the northern area of Punjab and Kerala in the south. He's also interested in Indian media studies and development studies. He has been a keen observer of Kerala for the last 50 years and has authored, among other titles, a much-cited book on the decline of Nair dominance in Kerala. May I request Professor Jeffrey to say a few words, please?
Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Manmohan Singh and other distinguished guests. It's a great honor to be part of this book launch, part of an event that recognizes the 50th anniversary of CDS and its services to Kerala, but to India more generally and to scholarship, I think, internationally. Since 1974, I've been a beneficiary of CDS and the work that's been produced here. I've used the library, been in touch with CDS scholars, and benefited greatly from publications that have grown out of CDS. Internationally, perhaps the concept most associated with CDS, as others have said, is the term the Kerala model or the Kerala model of economic development. Over the past weekend, Professor Oommen reminded me that probably the first time the expression appeared in print was in a paper by Professor Malcolm Adeseshaya, arising from a lecture he gave at Calicut University in 1978. And that lecture was published the following year in a book Professor Oommen edited, not unlike the book being published today, Kerala's Economy Since Independence, which was published in 1979. As others have said, the characteristics of Kerala's development, of course, have been identified in the United Nations sponsored report that Dr. Raj and others authored here, Poverty, Unemployment and Development Policy. Last night, after exchanging messages with Professor Oommen, I was curious about Kerala model, and I put it into the Google search engine, and I got 360,000 hits, beginning with the Wikipedia entry explaining the term in the way that we all have been discussing it just now. I became curious about this, and I wondered what would happen if you put Australian model into a Google search engine. What would come up? And when I did that, you'll find that you get 6 times more hits. You get 1.8 million hits. But, and this for me was the comical side, they refer to fashion models. The first item to come up on my browser is headlined, "The 20 most followed Australian models on Instagram." And all the pages that follow are accounts of aspiring young Australian women who want to be fashion models and appear in Vogue magazine and some of the great fashion models of the world. It's a very different reputation from the one the Kerala model has acquired over the last 50 years and given to Kerala and to Malayalis generally, an intellectual kind and a reflective kind. It would be wrong, of course, to suggest that the term Kerala model is CDS's major achievement in its 50 years of existence. Indeed, I think the book being released today, Kerala and the World Economy, demonstrates the breadth and depth of the Centre's research, its publishing, and its contributions over a very long time. It's a valuable collection, and scholars of economic development and social change all over the world will want a copy close at hand for background and reference. I'm very grateful to you for having invited me today. Thank you. As I said earlier, it's a great privilege to be here and to be part of the event. More importantly, I hope CDS can look forward to another 50 years of good work. And I hope that the second wave of the COVID infection starts to subside in Kerala, and that CDS and its friends and admirers and students can contribute to understanding the pandemic, and still more important, that they and their friends and relations and Malayalis generally can stay safe in a time of great trouble. So thank you again for inviting me, and I wish the book and of course CDS well.
Thank you, Professor Jeffrey. Professor M.A. Oommen is a very well-known name in Kerala in the field of economics. He has advised successive governments and continues to advise the economic sector in a very significant way in this state. We are proud to have him in the CDS as honorary fellow. He is also chairman of the Institute for Sustainable Development and Government. He has done immense work on decentralization and the problems of local self-government institutions. He has been postdoctoral scholar of the Rockefeller Foundation and visiting fellow at the Yale University. And he has served in various committees and commissions in India and abroad. May I request Professor Oommen to say a few words?
Dr. Thomas Isaac and distinguished colleagues, I feel honored to participate in this book release function.
Manmohan Singh.
It is more than a book release function in that it signifies 50 years of fruitful existence of the Center for Development Studies. The book Kerala and the World Economy has assembled 31 scholars, mostly of the younger generation, to produce 15 essays on various aspects of Kerala's development. in 1975, as Manmohan ji and others have recollected. The book Poverty, Unemployment and Development Policy of the Center has attracted worldwide attention, and it is, while it is an empirical study, it has thrown insights, perspectives and dialectics on the question of development itself. I may be missing, if I do not recollect, the 7 migration surveys that have been done at the CDS, which have collected a wealth of information on not only migrants and the lives of the lives they lived, but also on the economy and the society of Kerala. I think when Professor Robin Jeffrey referred to the Kerala model, it's important to recall the contribution of John Radcliffe's famous article, Social Justice and Demographic Transition, the lessons from India's Kerala state. That has highlighted that social justice is not an abstract idea, but a policy variable which has transformed the whole character of a state like Kerala, which was deeply caste-ridden and class-ridden and divided. And it is this that has, through the struggle of social justice, that Kerala was able to come up and to achieve a stature of model, which is of course not an ex-ante model or even a social construct, predictable social construct or any model like that. It's only an experience of a community struggling to fight injustices. I'm sure that most of this distinguished audience will be familiar with Thomas Piketty's latest book, Capitalism and Ideology, which refers to the social justice idea of Kerala. Not only that, it is a whole narrative that through struggle you can achieve and transform even capitalism. I do not want to elaborate more, but recollect and also tell that this is an occasion for Center for Development Studies to have a long, not only look back, but also look into the future. I wish the state and the center my great appreciation, and also that in the future Kerala economy has to be embedded in the society and polity of Kerala, and for that, and the institute will produce great books on democracy, freedom and inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Oommen. I would request those who are not speaking to put their whatever device on mute, so that the disturbance can be reduced to the maximum extent. Professor K.P. Kannan is the next speaker. He is very familiar with the Center for Development Studies. He has worked 38 years here, and he was the former director of the Center for Development Studies. He is also honorary fellow presently, and we are proud to have him as honorary fellow. He is chairman of the Laurie Baker for Habitat Studies, chairman, Center of Science and Technology for Rural Development, FAST4. Between 2004 and 2009, he was member of the National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector, a commission headed by Arjun Sengupta. He has worked with ILO and with the Cambodia Development Research Institute. He has published widely, the latest book being Kerala in Transition, Essays on Economy, Polity, and Society. May I request Professor Kannan to say a few words?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Dear and respected Dr. Manmohan Singh, Dr. Thomas Isaac, CDS Chairman Sri Chandrasekhar, and distinguished co-panelists, as well as those who are participating, and their students. I feel so happy to be a part of this book release function, mainly because of the presence of our former Prime Minister and a world-renowned economist and a friend of Dr. K.N. Raj, Dr. Manmohan Singh. I had the great privilege, as Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, of working under him as a member of a national commission that he constituted in 2004 to examine the problems faced by the unorganized sector and unorganized workers in India and recommend solutions. That was one of the best periods of my professional career, and I would like to thank Dr. Manmohan Singh, sir, personally today for that opportunity. Let me say a few words about the book. The book Kerala and the World Economy contains a set of 16 essays, including the introduction, largely focusing on the productive sectors of the Kerala economy that continues to challenge the state in attaining a well-rounded development trajectory. As Dr. Manmohan Singh mentioned, Kerala has changed since the publication of the UN-sponsored book prepared by Dr. Raj and his colleagues in 1975. It has experienced a structural transformation such that 80% of employment in Kerala is outside the agriculture sector, and 90% of the state income comes from outside the agriculture sector. In this book, chapters 12 and 13 chart new areas of research in understanding Kerala's external trade. Although it is confined largely to the commodity sector, the findings suggest a deficit that is around 16 to 17% of the state's GDP, or a little more than rupees 1 lakh crore in recent times. This seems to be financed, in my view, by the remittances from abroad as well as from the rest of India. In a recent study on foreign remittances, I found that it was close to 1 lakh crore of rupees per annum in recent times. That is to say, almost close to the deficit in Kerala's trade in commodities with the rest of India. Of course, we need to add remittances from rest of India as well to get a full picture of total remittances. In addition, we also need studies on trade in services, given the fact that nearly 2/3 of the state's GDP originates from the service sector. The book has an interesting narrative on the manufacturing sector, with the coming up of a few new generation companies with higher technology and knowledge intensity. However, the share of the manufacturing sector in total state income has been registering a decline from 15% in the early 1980s to 13% in recent times. Of course, it has grown impressively, but less than that of the service sector, and hence the decline in the share. But what is worrying is the nature of the growth process, that is from a jobless one to a job loss one. Between 2012 and 18, Kerala's manufacturing sector lost more than 5.5 lakh jobs, despite an increase of 75% in gross value added. In fact, Kerala economy experienced a greater intensity of job loss during the last 6 years, that is 2012 to 18, than all India. In an earlier study, I found that in all India, the job loss was 1.3%, whereas it was 12.5% for Kerala. Growth is now driven by increasing capital intensity and higher technology. The biggest challenge now facing Kerala, given its high human and social development, commendable as they are, and impressive aggregate growth, is the creation of decent jobs, especially for the educated and employed, and those who are currently outside the labor market. As of 2018, I find that there were 14.2 lakh men and women with at least a graduate level of education who are classified as unemployed or out of the labor market or in education. Of this, around 12 lakh, close to 12 lakh or 82% are women. Kerala's achievements in human development were driven largely, if not only, by educated women, but they find themselves increasingly sidelined by the technology-driven new labor market. The book has chapters that deal with some of the green shoots in the Kerala economy. Livestock sector is doing well. The IT and IT-enabled services sector continues to be small and slow-growing despite potential. Health sector has grown impressively in its treatment and education segments, but not in its manufacturing segment. Construction sector, though not part of this book, is the single most job-creating sector that seems to have reached a saturation point as of now. I hope the policymakers will take note of the findings of this book as it comes at this juncture of a deep economic crisis, as Dr. Singh mentioned in his introductory remarks, and the need for a long-term vision on what may be called sustainable development. I must thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity, and I'm especially glad to see Dr. Manmohan Singh releasing the book. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, you have muted yours.
Thank you, Professor Kannan. Professor Tirthankar Roy is a very distinguished alumnus of the center. Can you hear me? You can hear me, no?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, he's a very distinguished alumnus of the center and a professor of economic history at the London School of Economics. Before he went to LSE, he was in the Kokali Institute of Politics and Economics in Pune. He has authored several books on the colonial history of India and has also written the history of the Reserve Bank of India. He has done a great deal of work on economic and business history, not only of India, but all of South Asia. Professor Tirthankar Roy, will you say a few words at this occasion?
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Dr. Singh and friends, I am delighted and honored to be asked by Professor Mani to endorse Kerala and the world economy. It feels like we were waiting for this book. In 1986, the anthropologist Polly Hill published an article in the Modern Asian Studies with the title, Kerala is Different. Back then, Kerala was not just different. For many development economists, it was also an example for the rest of India. And CDS scholars shaped that discourse. They showed how. Since then, the world has moved on and Kerala has moved on. A new book was needed to show how the state has changed and if it still has lessons. It does indeed, in public goods delivery, political decentralization, environmental awareness, and management, among other things. It, its emergence as an economic powerhouse based on highly skilled services is very impressive too. The book covers these topics and is a fitting tribute to the CDS intellectual heritage. I confess that I am not a Kerala expert. My claim to joining this group is that I studied in CDS in the early 1980s and fell in love with Kerala. This is the place where I feel most at home, and this is where I developed some of the strongest friendships. I was a student at a time when the city where CDS is was much smaller, and its high culture of classical music, classical dance, and the arts was easily accessible to us students. We grew up enjoying that. I also developed a deep respect for Kerala cuisine, and for many years have been trying to perfect the beef fry recipe. Students from my time have a high regard for CDS, not only because it taught us economics or history or statistics, but also it opened our eyes to what a high quality research institute should be like. CDS showed us that research is nothing more complicated than a certain way of looking at the world around us, that any observation from real life can be a good subject for research. CDS also showed us that a good social scientist needed to be open-minded about method. CDS in those days gathered a group of people who were methodological liberals. Almost all were equally receptive to history, theory, and statistics. The seminars became occasions when historians, economists, anthropologists, statisticians, Marxists, subalterns, neoclassicals could all expect to find a serious audience. Such experiment can degenerate into chaos, but for the fact that individually the faculty and the visitors were some of the brightest and most creative minds in their fields. Looking back, it is this combination of methodological liberalism and faith in one's own common sense and observation power that mattered the most to my evolution as an academic. I imbibed both qualities in CDS, and I'm sure I'm speaking for many of my peers as well. Again, I'm delighted and honored to be here celebrating the 50 years of CDS, which is being remembered with a well-timed book that should generate a lot of interest. Thank you.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Professor Roy. Before passing on the mic to Professor Sunil Mani for the vote of thanks, let me also congratulate the director, Professor Sunil Mani, the faculty, and the students, the entire community of the Center for Development Studies, for having given new life to the organization, and also planning, organizing this series of lectures, this series of events, and today's event in particular, to commemorate the 50th birthday of the Center for Development Studies. Professor Mani, the floor is yours for the vote of thanks.
My job is to propose a vote of thanks to all the distinguished guests, starting with Honorable Dr. Manmohan Singh. And we are extremely grateful to you, sir, for your august presence and for releasing the book and the kind words that you have spoken about the center. It was such a privilege to have you at this function, which is one of the most important ones in our celebration of our 50th foundation year. And as you know, in the center, we do not have any tradition of celebrating our foundation years in terms of non-academic events. And we only have academic events. In fact, the center has not celebrated its 25th year of foundation It has already celebrated its 10th, 20th, and now the 50th, all with only academic events and with a book. So on behalf of all my colleagues, faculty, non-academic staff, and students, we convey our deepest thanks to you, Sir Dr. Singh, and wish you very many years of exemplary service to our nation. Thank you very much, sir. We are also extremely grateful to our Finance Minister, Dr. Thomas Isaac, and we are very proud to consider him as one of our distinguished alumni. As finance ministers go by, he is one of the few in the country who can, despite his very busy schedule, can snatch a few moments away to do very high quality academic research. He continues to publish journal articles, books, etc. and so on. And we thank him very much for his continued support to his alma mater. And I would promise that we will not make any unjustified demands on your resources at this difficult time. I thank our chairman, Mr. K.M. Chandrasekhar. It is he who conceived this particular event, and he has provided all the support to us all through this very difficult period. He is always available to me and to my colleagues to discuss difficulties, and is a true friend, philosopher, and guide to us, and especially at this very difficult time. And so thank you so much, sir, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Professor Frances Stewart has been a great friend of our center over the last several years, and she has already mentioned that she has donated the personal collection of her very illustrious father, Sir Nicholas Calder of University of Cambridge, way back in 1995. In fact, she came on her own, spending money from her own pocket to the center at that time, and donated a personal collection of her books, which, as you know, is a very precious collection here. And she has visited us quite recently to deliver the B.G. Kumar lecture at our center, and also introduce the latest book on development that she has written. And she has been very kind enough to endorse this new book on Kerala and the world economy. And we thank her very much and hope that she continues to associate herself with us. And in fact, I must say that she's even available to go through and referee our working papers, which, as you know, of course, I'm letting the cat out of the bag because this is a double-blind refereeing process. But she has actually refereed one of the papers quite recently. And so we are very grateful to Frances for continued support to us, and also for coming today and speaking very nicely about the center. Now, Professor Robin Jeffrey is very well known in Kerala, and indeed in the country as a keen researcher of the Keralan society. And in fact, his book on the decline of Nair dominance is extremely well known. And he has been a commentator and observer of Kerala and indeed India, I mean Punjab, over the last 50 years. And in fact, he has seen the growth of the center over the last 50 years from very close quarters. And we are so privileged that he readily agreed to write a foreword to the book. And in that foreword, as he has clearly he mentioned again, he has demystified the concept of the Kerala model of development, because there was some little controversy as to who actually provided this rubric for the first time. And so he has, but now I understand that what he has provided was not the last word, and there is still some more homework to be done there. He's a regular visitor to our center. He also came and delivered the B.G. Kumar lecture a few years ago, and he has also donated his entire personal collection of very precious books on and research material on Kerala to our library. And in fact, my colleagues say that it is such rich archival material on Kerala that they don't need to go to the archives to look at especially on historical material. So we register our very deepest thanks to Robin, and especially he has kept himself awake. It is almost like 12 in the midnight in Melbourne, where he's based right now, and it's so kind of him to have spent his time with us over the years. I must thank Professor M.A. Oommen, who is referred to as the doyen of Kerala economics. He has been researching on various dimensions of our economy for a very long period of time, continues to read, write, and engage in debates on Kerala's economy. And especially on these days, he specializes on issues related to decentralization of our economy, which is one of the contributions of our center to the rest of the Kerala society and economy. And he's also a very distinguished honorary fellow of our center, and he was very quick to, when requested to, and prompt to endorse the book. His support to our center needs to be acknowledged, and we are very thankful to him for his presence today, despite his advanced age. Professor K.P. Kannan is a person among all of us who can speak about the center and about the economy of Kerala. And as you can see, he has already made a short presentation himself about Kerala's economic growth and how you actually model it over the years. He has grown with the center. He joined the center way back in the early 1970s as a research associate or as an assistant professor, as assistant professors were called at that time. And he's worked his way up to become the director of the center for a very brief period of time in 2003-04 before joining the commission on the National Commission on Unorganized Enterprises. Okay. And he's very well known for his very high quality research on Kerala, and he has been a great mentor and a personal friend to me, and he has been continuing to advise and support us all through these years. We remain extremely indebted to him for his continued association as a honorary fellow, and he continues to publish almost every year. And in fact, we refer to his very recent paper, which is just about a few weeks old, and so on. We thank him for his presence in this evening, and we continue to seek his advice as we move forward into the next few years. Professor Tirthankar Roy is an excellent example of serious contribution to academia, and this is not an exaggeration at all, and not just in India, but in the world as well. As a professor of economic history at the London School of Economics and Politics, he has now emerged as one of the leading economic historians of India in the world, and he has a very unenviable publication record. In fact, he has several books which are under production and on the pipeline, and so on. So we are proud to have him as one of our most distinguished alumni, and he continues to support us being a visiting professor at our center. And in fact, I don't find words, if I may use the standard expression, words fail me in thanking him. And Tirtha is also a very close personal friend. We were contemporaries, and he continues to support us in various ways. And in fact, he's going to come back again towards the end of this month to give us a lecture on the new paper that he's working on the climate history and environmental history. He is going to present a paper on that towards the end of this month as part of our 50th Foundation Year series of lectures. So thank you so much, Tirtha. Several people have actually worked very hard behind the production of this book. You have 15 authors. Most of these authors are either alumni of the center or they are currently working at the center itself. Only there are 3 of them are not among these 15 who are not formally linked to the center, but they are great friends of the center, and so on. And apart from, so I thank all of them. I don't want to mention all their names, but I thank all of them for contributing to this book. And I also thank Dr. A.B. Jose, who is actually one of the first PhD students for the center, because he was very much instrumental in organizing the conference on which this book is based. And so thank you, Dr. Jose, who is actually a honorary fellow of the center as well. And I thank my colleagues, Mr. Tilak Baker, who is a publications officer. He worked extremely hard on this book to produce this within a very short period of time, and often working beyond office hours, and the severe demands that I placed on him at very many times. And my assistant, Mr. Mohan Kumar, who really worked extremely hard, not only on this book, but also on the second book on Indian economy, which we are now working on, and which we hope to publish as a second book in our series of 50th Foundation Year books. I also thank my secretary, Mr. Praveen, who has also been very helpful in helping me in producing this book, doing various charts and tables and etc. and so on, and the registrar and the senior finance officer for looking after the logistical aspects of this book. They all worked beyond the call of their duty, as I said before, towards the publication of this volume. And I thank all the guests within Kerala, outside, all our well-wishers, the members of our board who are present here, the Indian Council of Social Science Research, who has supported us all through these years. In fact, we are one of the oldest institutes under the Indian Council of Social Science Research. In fact, we are as old as the ICSSR, the Jawaharlal Nehru University, with which we are affiliated. We are again as old as the JNU also, and the government of Kerala, of course, above all, because it is the government of Kerala which has been supporting us through and through all through these years, and they have set up this Kerala and the World Economy Endowment, which has actually financed the publication of this book. We are extremely grateful to the Kerala government and specifically the Planning and Economic Affairs Department and the State Planning Board and all its vice chairman, the secretary to the Planning and Economic Affairs Department, Dr. Venu, who is currently occupying that post, Dr. V. Ramchandran, who is the vice chairman of the Planning Board, and all members of the Planning Board who has always been very helpful and supportive to us. And I invite you to our next book launch, which will be in the March of 2021, which will be a book on India's economy and society, lateral explorations. And I also invite you to our remaining series of 8 lectures under the 50th Foundation Year lecture series, or the details of all of which you can find in cds.edu, which is there in the program calendar. It's very easy for you to join us. All you have to do is to just click on the link that is provided. We don't ask for any registration or any of your or other details. So thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Singh, once again. And thank you, Dr. Isaac, Francis Stewart, Robin Jeffrey, Professor Oommen, Professor Kannan, and Professor Tirthankar Roy, and all of you for joining us, and Mr. K.M. Chandrasekhar for guiding us all through these years. Thank you very much, and a good evening to all of you. Thank you, and bye.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this meeting. And let me once again thank our distinguished panelists and the Honorable Finance Minister of Kerala, and most of all, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who so kindly consented to spend so much of time with the Center for Development Studies today. Thank you, and let's hope we meet again soon.
Thank you.
I unmuted myself to say hello to everybody and say it was a wonderful experience. So,
thank you. Thank you. Okay, shall we?